These four young musicians were on the verge of taking over the music world, until they betrayed each other in the worst way imaginable. What began as a simple folk group from California soon evolved into the sound of an entire generation, crafting songs that became definitive anthems of the 1960s. But behind their success lay ambition, forbidden romances, and betrayals that eventually tore everything apart. Today, we unravel the story of a legendary band that had it all and lost it all. Let's begin. In the early 1960s, on the vibrant music scene of New York City, a young songwriter and guitarist named John Phillips dreamed of making it big in the world of folk music. Inspired by the growing popularity of the genre across the United States, he decided to form his first group, the Journeymen, a trio made up of Phillips himself, Scott McKenzie, and Dick Weissman. The group emerged at a time when folk music was dominating the American landscape, with artists like Peter, Paul, and Mary, and Bob Dylan shaping the cultural conversation, powerful influences on Phillips's musical vision. The Journeymen became known for their rich vocal harmonies and traditional instrumental arrangements, performing both popular folk standards and original material. They played in iconic Greenwich Village clubs and recorded 3 albums, gaining modest recognition within the folk scene. But despite their talent, widespread commercial success never arrived. During these years, John Phillips was married to Susan Adams, with whom he had a daughter. But his personal life took an unexpected turn in 1962 when he met Michelle Gilliam, a 17-year-old model, 9 years younger than him. Their connection was immediate, and not long after, Phillips divorced Susan and married Michelle. What seemed at the time like a romance destined to last would eventually become one of the most costly decisions of his life. As we'll soon discover, by 1964, everything changed. The arrival of the British invasion, led by the Beatles and a wave of British rock bands, completely reshaped the musical landscape. Traditional folk began to lose its commercial appeal, overshadowed by a more modern electric sound. A new style emerged: folk rock, blending the energy of rock with the sensitivity of folk. Groups like the Byrds and Simon & Garfunkel transformed the genre, leaving the Journeymen in an increasingly difficult position. Faced with these industry shifts, the trio dissolved. But the collaboration between Scott McKenzie and John Phillips was far from over, and later in this story, we'll see how the two would come together again to create one of the defining anthems of the entire hippie movement. Despite the failure of the Journeymen, John Phillips refused to give up. He remained convinced that he could build a successful folk group, but this time he knew he had to adapt to a new era and avoid the mistake that had doomed his previous band, sounding too traditional. He wasn't alone in shaping this new vision. At his side was his wife, Michelle Phillips, who shared his enthusiasm and helped him imagine a more modern sound, an evolution of folk that incorporated touches of pop and rock. They drew inspiration from the electric phase of Bob Dylan and the innovative style of the Byrds, who were redefining folk music with a fresh, contemporary approach. But, as we'll see later, sometimes the very idols who inspire you can end up becoming your greatest rivals, and not necessarily in the musical sense. With this new direction in mind, John reached out to an old acquaintance from the New York folk scene, Denny Doherty, a talented Canadian singer who had been part of the Mugwumps, another folk group that, much like the Journeymen, had recently fallen apart. Denny's voice was remarkable, warm, powerful, and perfectly suited to the kind of vocal harmony that John and Michelle envisioned. That's how the new Journeymen were born. A new lineup where John, Michelle, and Denny sought to modernize folk without losing its essence. Their harmonies became richer and more intricate, blending influences from the New York folk scene with the rising musical movement developing in Los Angeles. Yet success remained out of reach. Despite the talent and ambition behind the project, the new journeymen failed to gain traction in the industry or produce the hit that could finally launch them to stardom. And what John didn't know at the time was that Denny Doherty would later play a central role in one of the most painful blows to his marriage, an unexpected twist that would change his personal life forever. But for now, we still have a bit more ground to cover before we get there. Something big was coming, a radical shift that would not only transform their careers, but spark the birth of something much greater. John, Michelle, and Denny needed a new direction, and that change was just around the corner. In his relentless pursuit of success, Denny Doherty had a clear idea. The group needed a voice that could take them to another level. That's why he recommended Cass Elliot, a close friend and former bandmate from the Mugwumps, convinced that her vocal talent was exactly what they were missing. However, Cass's addition to the group wasn't immediate. John Phillips resisted the idea at first, influenced by the industry prejudices of the time, a world where an artist's physical appearance played a decisive role. Cass was overweight, and in an era obsessed with image, that alone was seen as a barrier. But what John struggled to accept in the beginning soon became undeniable. Cass Elliot had a one-of-a-kind voice, a magnetic charisma, and a sense of humor that could light up any room. Denny pushed again and again for her inclusion until John finally gave in, and that's when everything changed. With Cass joining the group, they found their definitive sound. Beyond her remarkable voice, she brought a special energy and quickly became a crucial element in the band's dynamic. Cass also shared a deep personal bond with Denny Doherty. She was deeply in love with him, even though her feelings were never reciprocated. Despite this, the two maintained a sincere friendship and a strong musical connection. But Cass's feelings didn't simply disappear. She tried to hide them, to push them down. Yet, over time, this would become one of the many emotional tensions simmering within the band. And so, in 1964, the remaining members of the new Journeymen transformed into the MAMAS and the PAPAS with Cass's arrival. Their sound shifted toward a more modern, pop-influenced folk rock, far fresher and more vibrant than any of John's previous projects. Even the name of the group has a peculiar origin. At first, they called themselves the Magic Circle, but they wanted something more distinctive. Inspiration struck while watching an interview with members of the Hells Angels, who mentioned they called their women mamas. Cass, with her spontaneous spark, exclaimed that she wanted to be Mama Cass. John replied, "If you girls are the mamas, then we'll be the papas." And just like that, the iconic name The Mamas and the Papas was born. With the final lineup now in place, the group was ready to take their next big step, as we'll see next. In 1964, the newly formed quartet made a crucial decision. They would move to Los Angeles, the city where so many musicians' dreams were brought to life. Leaving New York wasn't easy, but they were convinced that California was the right place for their musical vision. And they carried with them an ace up their sleeve, a powerful new song they hoped would make a spectacular debut. That song was California Dreamin'. It was born during a cold New York winter when John and Michelle Phillips captured Michelle's deep longing for her hometown of Long Beach, California. In 1965, now settled in Los Angeles, the group landed an audition with Lou Adler, co-founder of Dunhill Records. When Adler heard them sing live, he was immediately struck by the magic of their vocal harmonies. He didn't hesitate for a second. He offered them a record deal on the spot. With Dunhill Records behind them, the group recorded California Dreamin', released as a single in December 1965. From the moment it hit the airwaves, California Dreamin' became a phenomenon. Its melancholic guitar intro, paired with the group's hypnotic harmonies, turned the song into an instant classic. It perfectly captured the spirit of a generation. Its lyrics speaking of longing, of change, and of a desire to break free from routine and conformity. It resonated with countless young people dreaming of a different life, of something more. The single quickly rose up the charts, establishing the MAMAS and the PAPAS as one of the most innovative forces in mid-60s music. But the impact of California Dreamin' was only the beginning. In March 1966, the band released their second single, Monday, Monday. Not only did it sustain their momentum, it achieved something even more remarkable. It became the group's first and only song to reach number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100.
Monday, Monday.
The success of their singles paved the way for their debut album, If You Can Believe Your Eyes and Ears, released in February 1966. With its fresh sound, flawless harmonies, and unmistakable visual identity, the MAMAS and the PAPAS solidified themselves as one of the most influential bands of the era. But success always brings its own challenges. As mentioned earlier, Cass Elliot was quietly suffering from her unrequited love for Denny, and John Phillips, who had left his wife for Michelle, a model 10 years younger, was unknowingly creating the perfect breeding ground for personal conflicts. Tensions simmered beneath the surface, but they wouldn't stay hidden for long. Pivotal moments were coming, moments that would test the group's stability and ultimately change their story forever. Before continuing, I invite you to subscribe and activate notifications so you don't miss any of our videos about rock legends. We upload videos every week, so let's continue. The success of the MAMAS and the PAPAS seemed unstoppable, but behind the scenes, the story was very different. Daily life within the group, along with their tangled personal relationships, grew increasingly tense and volatile, threatening the band's very stability. John Phillips, a relentless perfectionist, had a precise artistic vision and demanded absolute commitment and accuracy in every detail of their music. But his constant pressure and controlling personality began to create friction with the other members, turning the atmosphere into something stifling and difficult to bear. Yet, John could never have imagined the double betrayal that was about to shatter both his marriage and his band. One committed by his wife, and the other by the friend he himself had invited into the group. Michelle Phillips, married to John, began a secret romance with Denny Doherty. The affair remained hidden for a while, but when the truth finally surfaced, it tore the group apart. For Cass Elliot, the revelation was devastating. She had secretly been in love with Denny, and while she never openly admitted her feelings, learning about his involvement with Michelle filled her with anger and heartbreak. Trust within the band fractured instantly, and the working dynamic became nearly impossible. But things got even worse for John. He soon discovered that Michelle had also had an affair with Gene Clark of the Byrds, the very band John had admired when he first ventured into folk rock. His idol, his inspiration, had been with his wife. For John Phillips, this was the breaking point. He felt betrayed not just personally, but professionally. The band stood on the brink of collapse. In June 1966, the internal crisis reached an unbearable level, and Michelle was expelled from the group. She was replaced by Jill Gibson, a singer and photographer who tried her best to fill the void. But the chemistry was gone. Fans rejected the change, and Michelle's absence weakened the group's live dynamic. It soon became clear that the MAMAS and the PAPAS were not the same without her, and she was brought back shortly afterward. In 1967, as a last-ditch effort to maintain his relevance in the industry, John Phillips co-organized the Monterey Pop Festival, an event that would redefine the direction of rock music. It became the launching pad for artists like Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin, and marked the beginning of the Summer of Love. And as mentioned earlier, Monterey also catapulted an old friend back into John's life, Scott McKenzie. Their careers had diverged after the New Journeymen dissolved, but fate brought them together again in an unexpected way. In 1967, as a gesture of support, John wrote the song San Francisco, Be Sure to Wear Flowers in Your Hair for Mackenzie, specifically to help promote the Monterey Pop Festival that he was organizing. no one anticipated what would happen next. The song became a massive hit, echoing throughout the entire hippie movement. It became the second great anthem of the 1960s counterculture, surpassed only by California Dreamin'. Yet, the Monterey Pop Festival was bittersweet for the Mamas and the Papas. Their performance received mixed reviews. Though still influential, the band no longer shone with the same intensity as the explosive new talents emerging around them. The musical world was changing, and they were falling behind. That same year, they released their third album, The Mamas and the Papas Deliver, featuring hits like Dedicated to the One I Love and Creek Alley, an autobiographical song recounting the group's origins and rise to fame. Despite commercial success, the internal fractures continued to deepen. Relationships were severely damaged, and the members' motivation slowly faded. The toll wasn't just emotional, it became physical as well. Substance use escalated within the group, especially for Denny Doherty, who turned to alcohol in an effort to cope with the growing tension and disillusionment. In 1968, irreconcilable differences ultimately led Cass Elliot to leave the group and pursue a solo career. Her departure marked the end of the band's original lineup. Although they still had contractual obligations, the spirit that had fueled them in the beginning was gone. In 1971, they released their final album, People Like Us, solely to fulfill their commitments to the record label. But the magic had vanished. The Mamas and the Papas had come to an end. After the breakup of the Mamas and the Papas, each member went their own way, leaving behind the conflicts, yet carrying with them the weight of their shared history and musical legacy. Cass Elliot was the first to truly take off as a solo artist. With her powerful voice and magnetic personality, she built a successful solo career and became a beloved figure within the music industry. Her talent was undeniable, but her life was tragically cut short on July 29, 1974, when she died in London from heart failure at only 32 years old. John Phillips, the band's creative architect, attempted to reinvent himself musically, releasing his solo album, John Phillips, the Wolf King of L.A. However, his life soon spiraled into a dark period marked by personal struggles and addiction, which hindered his ability to remain active in the industry. Even so, his contributions to music were formally recognized in 1998, when the Mamas and the Papas were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Phillips died of heart failure on March 18, 2001. Michelle Phillips chose a different path. She left music behind and found her place in the world of acting, building a successful career in film and television. Her presence in Hollywood kept her in the public eye for decades, making her one of the few band members to forge a long-lasting career beyond their musical fame. Denny Doherty, meanwhile, continued with his musical pursuits and ventured into theater and television. He also released a solo album and remained active in various artistic projects throughout his life. In January 2007, he passed away due to complications from kidney failure. With Denny's passing, Michelle Phillips became the only surviving member of the group, the last living witness to the impact, the legacy, and the unforgettable story of the Mamas and the Papas. What's truly fascinating is how some bands and artists, despite having only a brief moment in music history, still manage to leave an indelible mark on the industry. The Mamas and the Papas burned brightly between 1965 and 1968, just 3 short years, before collapsing under the weight of personal conflict. But when it comes to short, meteoric careers, few stories are as astonishing as that of Ritchie Valens. At only 17 years old, and in just 8 months, he transformed rock and roll by blending it with traditional Mexican music, leaving behind immortal classics like La Bamba. Click on the next video, where we explore the brilliant but tragically brief rise of Ritchie Valens. I'll see you there, my rock-loving friend.